Hey everyone, this is Evan, the blind strength coach from K-Enable Fitness, and today we are covering Goalball in our strength conditioning training needs series. So, if you're a blind athlete wanting to get better at goalball, we have a few different things that we specifically need to focus on. Goalball is a classic blind sport that's actually invented with the blind in mind instead of adapting a current sport and changing it for those with visual impairments. So it's very cool and unique in that way. And it's very uniquely taxing to the body. So we need to make sure that we're preparing our bodies appropriately to be able to succeed in the highest way possible if we're really pursuing this as a sport, or in order to make sure our bodies are good and ready to be able to have a lot of fun with it if we're doing it recreationally. So first is the different planes of motion. We have the frontal and transverse planes of motion that are used the most in goalball, whereas in everyday life, especially for those of us who are blind, we move mostly in the sagittal plane. So if you think about moving straight up and down with a normal squat, sitting and standing with the chair, that is going to be that sagittal plane. We don't tend to move just straight up and down like we would in, let's say, powerlifting, something like that. So we need to make sure that we're able to move side to side and then have rotational capacity. Side to side is going to be incredibly important for playing defense or for rearranging for offense in order to be able to throw really quickly and try to catch the defense off guard. And obviously for defense, we need to be able to move laterally and especially from a crouch position. So these are some very unique positions that we need to be able to train. And so making sure that we're able to do things like Cossack squats or Bulgarian split squats, things that are more unilateral and allow us to really shove out to the side using our glutes and other aspects of the outside of the hip really well is incredibly important. Now, when it comes to the transverse plane, that rotation, that's hugely important when it comes to being able to pass the ball to somebody on your team, or even more importantly, to be able to throw the ball appropriately. We're going to have very similar to a bowling motion, or if you're really fancy and do the spinning, then it's even more obvious how being able to rotate in the hips and the upper body is incredibly important. So being able to be powerful in these ways, utilizing the obliques and the hip rotators is going to be beyond important for being able to have a good, powerful, speedy throw. So focusing on these different planes of motion is going to be an incredibly important way to do that. When we focus on the transverse plane, you can do different things in the gym when it comes to being able to make your obliques do things appropriately or your hips do things appropriately by taking different angles with like lunges or explosive steps. You can do things like power press holds or chops, and you can also do different things for the core specifically when it comes to practicing throws, doing things ballistically in one arm, or even doing the classic Russian twist with a medicine ball. Now, our next point that we really need to harp on if we're pursuing goalball is durability. You're going to be having a lot of impacts with the ground, and the ball is more than likely, at least if you're a good defender and get in the way, going to have some impacts with you. So we have to make sure that our body is good and capable of enduring that. So putting on some strategic muscle is going to be really important. We can't just be like, sumo wrestlers where we're putting on a lot of weight just for the sake of weight, because we're not going to be able to be as explosive in those frontal and transverse planes then. So we have to make sure we're in really good shape and putting on muscle in order to be more durable. So if we're able to have a little bit more weight and muscle in some areas like the shoulders, the outside of the arm with the tricep, with having to land and things, and then also the outside of the thighs, which applies really well for our frontal plane work anyway, and then maybe a little bit more on the quads, the hamstrings, etc., then we're going to be able to take the brunt of those impacts a little bit better and recover from them better. And then it's also, again, not needless muscle or weight that we're putting on. Instead, it's going to be functional for our needs as well. And then the last point I want to make is conditioning. Goalball can be a very fast-paced sport, and is encouraged to be with the sort of shot clock that they have built in. But what we've got to do is make sure our body is prepared for that high force output. We don't want to have these token throws where it's really easy for the defense to be able to gobble up that throw and completely stop it and then be able to have a quick turnaround. Instead, we need to be the aggressors when it comes to our conditioning and our ability to react, stop the ball, gather it, and then throw it back really quickly. And we also need to make sure that that throw is incredibly strong so we have a better likelihood of being able to score a point. Once you score, it's going to be a little bit more of a break for you. So it doesn't hurt to be winning in that way. So when it comes to our conditioning, we can do a couple of different things in order to approach the anaerobic needs of this sport. So in order to be really fast twitch and encourage recovery, we can do something like a cardio machine, like an air bike, where you have to use your arms as well, because that taxes the entire system. Something like a ski erg or a rower, where we're stable, we're safe, even though we're visually impaired, and we're able to just gun it. And you can use like an audible interval timer in order to go, let's say, 10 seconds on, 30 to 50 seconds off, or nice and easy for recovery, and then being able to have repeated, really hard bouts like that. We can also mess around with those time domains a little bit, but that gets really fancier and gets me fully into my coaching mode. Another thing that you can do in order to focus on really good power output is something like Westside Barbell's speed days. We're doing 10 sets of 2 with limited rest on important exercises that are compound. So let's say a wide stance box squat. It could be some front squats. It could be, if we're getting really capable and being able to load up some good strong lateral lunges and being able to fire back in place, being able to use the outside of the hip, have a little bit more transfer with the frontal plane, then we can do that. Have some really explosive movements, high force output. Bench is another example, being able to do that, or some explosive pull-ups, something like that. And then being able to utilize the rest of, let's say, an entire minute or 45 seconds of rest in order to really push the system. So we're having some sets of 2 or 3 really high speed, not as heavy as we can go, but making sure that we have that crazy high force output, and then letting that training transfer better to the goalball court. If you have any questions regarding this type of stuff, go ahead and shoot some comments in below. I'm really happy to answer any sorts of questions. And if you're looking into strength conditioning needs for your blind sport or personal training needs for you as an individual, I do provide that as well. And you can ask about that by emailing canenablepfitness@gmail.com.